So yeah, you're kind of known for being into this AI thing.
I really like AI. So, but for a bunch of reasons. One, it turns out that AI needs data, and I think we just even heard from the last conversation, AI runs on data, and if you think about it as AI models have been trained on the public internet, but for them to be useful inside of an enterprise context, they need your data. And where is your data? By volume, most of it is in your documents, your contracts, your research information, your marketing assets, your invoices, your memos, all of that unstructured data. And that's effectively what we've been building a platform for now 2 decades, is to manage all that information. And so agents become now the core user of that information in the future. So that's sort of why we're so bullish on this, is like finally the sort of unsolved problem of how do you actually turn all of that data into something that is valuable within your business is now playing out. So that's what gets us super excited.
So one of the things I always look forward to reading whenever there's a new model coming out, there's a few things you can be sure of. One, it's going to top every new benchmark out there.
Yes.
The second is you're going to get a tweet about 3 seconds after it comes out from Aaron saying, we've been pre-testing whatever it was, and it's improved, insert here by X%.
This is positive or is this a roast? What is the, okay, because those are good tweets, I think. Okay.
They are, but my question for you is, now I want to make you choose among your children some. There's a lot of discussion that, it was all OpenAI before and now Google's coming on.
Yeah.
What does it look like from your perspective? How competitive are Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic? And has there been a change in terms of how close they are to one another?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's so fun about our industry right now is certainly everybody here and anybody tuning in, we are so into the daily skirmishes and the daily battle between all the AI models, and we think about it truly as a race. And depending on how long you think the race is, we think every single day is sort of, this is the moment when something now has broken ahead. I think what will happen is you'll look at this more in 3 or 5 or 10 years from now, and we'll probably laugh a little bit at how much we cared about 1 point improvements on a particular eval or benchmark, because the technology will have gone up by an order of magnitude and capability. But it matters today because everybody has to implement workflows with AI models, and they should probably use the best AI model at any given time within some reasonable amount of what that time period is. And so I think we care for a reason, because we're all looking for some degree of alpha within the implementation of AI. But again, if you look at it over a 5-year period, it's sort of completely anybody's game. And we can't predict who the winner is going to be. We can't predict the order of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th place, simply because there's just going to be these constant breakthroughs that keep happening. So the thing that I think we just get excited about is you've never had a technology category like this as early in its sort of life cycle, where you have 3, 4, 5 maybe viable platforms that are all competing with as much sort of velocity as what we're seeing in AI, in a way that is available to all of us instantaneously. That's just never happened before. Like in the early days of cloud, let's say, Amazon had a 2-year window at minimum where they were the only game in town. Then you had Azure emerge. Then you had GCP eventually kind of start to happen. That was like an 8-year period before it was really 3 viable competitors that all kind of came online. We have that with a couple other players in about a 2-year period. And so the great thing from just a user of these technologies, whether as an end user or a developer, is you have hundreds of billions of dollars of capital expenditure and R&D going into technology that you get to use instantaneously. And so that's just a great thing. And so I think we're going to be in this race for quite some time.
Since you mentioned hundreds of billions of dollars of capital, and some of the folks that you mentioned are looking to turn that into trillions of dollars of capital over the next few years, obviously there's a lot of talk, are we in a bubble? And one of the ways that I break that down is you don't have to not believe in AI to also believe we could be in a bubble. It's also about the pace of investment. And we were talking about this with Clay and Brett, that the .com, almost all those ideas came to fruition.
Yeah.
We have pets.com as a sustainable business. We have Webvan. We even have Cosmo.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a bubble, a boom, a bust, and then a long sort of building of something sustainable.
Yeah.
Do you think something similar is happening with AI, or do you think
What do you think my answer is going to be?
Well, I read some of those tweets, and they seem pretty happy. I mean, it's working out well for you guys.
I mean, a couple of differences. So I remember using Cosmo.com, and it was not, anywhere near using Instacart or DoorDash today, and on a dial-up internet connection, Cosmo and Webvan is just very different from pulling up your phone and getting access to a meal. And so I think the comparison, the challenge is that in the dot-com bubble, you had a couple 100 million people online globally on the internet. So that was your TAM instantaneously. You were constrained by that many people. Then you had a whole bunch of people that had to just figure out what is this whole internet thing, and they had to change a whole bunch of behavior because PCs had really only come into their life in the past decade. We're in a very different environment. We have, 5-6 billion people online, let's say. It is just a rite of passage of everybody on the planet is online. So your TAM now is 2 orders of magnitude more than it was in the dot-com boom. We have these technologies are obviously already extremely capable. If you look at search traffic and how much it's already shifted to ChatGPT or to AI mode in Gemini, I think these are technologies that are already rolling out much faster than if you were to kind of compare it to, let's say, 1997 in internet terms, we're way ahead on a relative basis based on that adoption. So that's the first part. But I think the bigger thing about from a TAM standpoint is the TAM truly is effectively all knowledge work, and eventually it'll get even into industrial work as well. But let's just say the TAM is all of knowledge work. And if you imagine that maybe 5 or 10% of knowledge work gets converted into revenue for AI systems broadly, then the numbers of the capital, the capex right now are just they pale in comparison to that TAM. And so I think that's the bet that everybody's making. Could it be mistimed by a year or 3 years or 5 years? Sure, it's very plausible. But I think for anybody who's in the game right now, because you can't know if you underbuild, you will find out in just the form of loss of market share. If you overbuild, you have time to kind of work through that. And the other big difference is, unlike Webvan and Cosmo or whatever, the people that might overbuild are multi-trillion-dollar companies. And so their ability to sustain long periods of time where maybe the adoption needs to come
some of them
online.
are. So, Google, Meta, Microsoft, yes. OpenAI, they're talking about spending trillions, but they're not making trillions.
Yeah, I think that OpenAI, Anthropic, a few others are probably getting to a stage where there's enough support in the ecosystem because of the kind of criticality, not from a too big to fail kind of standpoint, just like truly like they're powering enough very important technology that people will pay. Right now, we're paying less because everybody keeps competing down the profit margins. But if in a world where they had to just somehow make the data center expense work, we would pay double the price if we needed. It's like the value and productivity that these systems are offering. At some point, already I'm surprised that it's as cheap as it is. I know why from a competitive and Moore's law standpoint, but we're benefiting from how competitive this market is. And in a moment where somebody had to pay $100 billion for a data center, there's lots of ways the business model would work out.
And from your perspective,
and this is even before $1 of revenue for advertising in ChatGPT. So that gets lit up, boom, you have tens of billions of dollars in revenue.
So given what you said about all knowledge work potentially, AI capable, you didn't talk about it all going to AI. But one of the questions my cousin who's graduating college asked me, so what field should I go into?
Yeah.
And I don't have a good answer because we hear about types of jobs that are going away, but most of the jobs that are going away that are not going away so things like caregiving and real hands-on stuff aren't necessarily the jobs that everyone's clamoring to get. Some people want to do them; they're important jobs, but if you are giving the advice, what kinds of jobs do you think will exist several years from now that are desirable?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably where I'm 99th percentile on the optimistic end of the spectrum. I think that the people that predict the mass job destruction will be proven wrong. I think that I generally see AI in the normal arc of technology kind of history, which is we get new tools that moves us up an abstraction layer from what we were doing previously, but we effectively do a higher order of work than we were before, and I've not seen an example at any real large scale where AI is not sort of delivering that. Part of the reason is actually, ironically, and I think we'll probably talk about it later, maybe with Gary or others, is like the technology has limitations. It fundamentally requires humans to provide the oversight over an AI system, and we don't know how to stop that. We don't know how to get to a point where that goes away. There's people maybe followed there was a great piece from Dorkesh Patel this weekend that sort of imagined, well, at some point maybe the AGI will emerge and it will learn your whole business and it will operate autonomously. But today we don't have that. And the reality is that AI is very good at tasks. Jobs are collections of tasks. And as AI improves, it will be able to do more of those tasks. And let's just imagine that somehow it kind of sustains that progress over time. Then the thing I have a lot of conviction on is that today's jobs are tomorrow's tasks. And so we just move up another kind of layer of what work looks like. And so it means that an engineer might be able to do 3 times the amount of tasks they were before. But guess what? The world wants 10 times more software. And so you didn't actually change the underlying equation of how many engineers you need. And I think that's going to be true of more categories than we think. I don't think the world has enough medical breakthroughs, and I don't think the world has enough doctors working with patients, and I don't think the world has enough engineers building software for the next set of problems that are going to exist. So that kind of, to me, convinces me that you aren't going to see this sort of wholesale shift in the kind of jobs that we do. The work will look very different, but I don't think you're going to see broad changes in how many engineers a company employs, maybe plus or minus 10 or 20%, but or how many sales reps a company has, or how many people doing marketing. What will happen is the output of those organizations will just go up by 3x or 5x.
And is that what you've seen inside Box? Like
already, I'll give you a quick example of the kind of thing that anybody predicting the end of jobs never sees until you get access to the technology. So anybody in a B2B company, we have these roles called sales engineers. Sales engineers, their job is to go to the customer. They're the technical counterpart of the sales team. They go to the customer. They make sure that the customer sort of understands how the technology works, and they work in a kind of consultative fashion with the customer. Usually the sales engineer is doing demos and maybe doing some presentations and getting kind of technical requirements from the customer. Now, with things like Cursor or any kind of vibe coding technology, you're going to see them start to build full custom environments for that customer. And they'll build just full custom software. And I was in a sales pitch a month and a half ago where one of our sales engineers built an entire custom portal for that client with that client's branding with Box built into it. The time that sales engineer spent preparing for that customer call was actually more than they would have pre-AI. So actually, we didn't save any time. We actually spent more time now selling to this customer. But guess what? The efficacy of that sales process is now going to go up. The quality of it will go up. Our win rate will go up. Maybe eventually that gets competed out because everybody will have to do that just to stay competitive, just to stay on at today's level. We might all have to do that. And then in that world, guess what? Our ratios are just wrong. We'll need more sales engineers because the customer will expect that you're building full custom prototypes and environments for them in the sales pitch. That's the kind of thing that no economist predicts in advance of this technology. That because they're not going to say, okay, well, the cost of building software goes down. They think today's software demand is fixed. So if the cost of delivering software goes down, then you just have fewer engineers. Turns out, actually, if you lower the cost of building software, you have 10 times the number of use cases for software. That's the part that everybody sort of misses until you have access to the tool. So my general advice for, maybe 70% of people, let's say in college, I think there's probably some areas where you'd have to be more specific, is just get really, really good at whatever the thing is that you're interested in or studying. Like, get really, really good at marketing, get really, really good at sales, get really, really good at engineering. And yes, use AI to do it all, but your job is not to be a prompt engineer. Your job is to be freaking good at judgment in whatever domain or category that you're interested in or that you think you should get a job in on the other end. And then use AI to increase the productivity of what you're doing. So I just have not seen evidence where you should fundamentally change your whole view on what kind of roles to take. Even in the cases where maybe you have customer support roles that will increasingly take fewer and fewer work because agents will answer the question. that same person will do a customer success management job in the future. And so now they'll just be in an outbound role as opposed to an inbound role. So we as an economy will have to certainly go through some shifts to make sure everybody lands in the right spot at the end of this. But I'm not seeing convincing evidence that wholesale jobs fundamentally change in the way that I think are being predicted from the doomers.
So going into this, I thought of you as kind of a big optimist. That has not changed. But I do wonder, for someone who is so optimistic, where are the things that you are like, oh, we got to be careful there?
Yeah.
Like what are the things that you actually think we should be spending some time being more careful on, worrying about, whether that's safety or I don't know? What are the things where you're like, I'm not worried about the job thing, I am worried about this. What's the this?
I'm very worried, but like short of regulation, I'm very worried, around security and, there's going to be some incredibly spectacular security events as a result of AI, because you've already seen, interesting kind of experiments. You can prompt inject an AI and pull out something from data it has access to. Like the quick, simple way to think about it is anything an AI system has access to, you as a user, if you have access to that AI system, can eventually pull it out, because the AI will not be able to fully keep secrets within its context window. So if you give an AI access to your entire database, and you give a user access to the AI, then you'll be able to get anything from that database into the user. You'll eventually be able to prompt inject your way into that. We don't know how to solve that at the moment. So this is why, a lot of the core principles of having separation of duties between what systems do or what data things have access to, or having really high quality access controls and security, this is going to matter even more in a world of AI. And this is, partly why I'm so bullish on the SaaS category generally, and certainly, products like Box is, in a world where you might have 100 or 1,000 times more AI agents, then that's 100 or 1,000 times more complexity of things that need to access your enterprise resources, whether that's data or workflows or software. So then the control plane that kind of controls and traffic cops who has access to what and what workflow is being triggered when, that becomes even more important to get right in the future. So the agents are super important, but actually the systems the agents run on become even more important and valuable. So security, certainly safety in the models, making sure that, again, they're not doing whatever we might all collectively consider as dangerous practices. But I have found that at least within the Valley and probably most of the organizations we care about, I think safety has sort of, just by the virtue of it becoming a very important topic for anybody doing AI research, I think it's taken very seriously by the industry. And I've been happy that of the level of focus that everybody's had, without needing massive, overhanded, kind of aggressive regulation.
Well, that would be a whole point to debate for another day.
Yes.
But we have about a minute left. I'm curious, when we come back a year from now, where do you think this is all going that people don't realize? What are we going to be able to do in the short term that most people aren't aware we're going to be able to do really soon?
Yeah, I think the big opportunity, let's say, and this is sort of why I think everybody's timelines are wrong, though, is because I think it will take longer than maybe some realize, but we still will use all of the token capacity in the data centers, and I think the data center buildup is necessary for this. But everybody knows Cursor and Replit and Lovable and Bolt and the sort of codecs and vibe coding or at least agents that will generate a lot of code. We know that in the coding space. And my general expectation is we will see that across all of knowledge work. So, the lawyer will have that within their organization, and the marketer will have that, and the researcher at a life sciences company will have that equivalent. There's a big difference, though, is the way you code, the systems you use to code, how text-driven code is. All of these things are built for coding agents to be hyper successful. As you get into other areas of knowledge work, it's just not as clean or as simple as we've seen in coding, so that's why it will take longer. But I think over the next 1 to 3 years, that will be the paradigm shift, which is we don't just go to a chat interface and ask a question and go back and forth. We will send tasks to an agent, it will go do work for us, and then we go review the work that the agent kicked off. And that's again why the data centers end up being important, because that type of activity with AI might use 100 or 1,000 times more tokens than just asking a simple question of an LLM. And so a lot of the data center build out is in anticipation of that type of use case, or to respond to even today's need for that use case, which is why I think we're going to use the capacity.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for bringing your enthusiasm.
See you.